Okay, welcome everyone. We are now at the top of the hour and we're going to get started. Thank you for joining us today for the hands-on tools and tips for using PestPac during COVID-19. My name is Paula Alves and I'll be your moderator for today's session. I want to make sure everyone can see the screen and hear the audio. So if someone could let me know in the chat, that would be great. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Before we get started, I wanted to discuss a few housekeeping items with you. We'll have everyone on mute for the duration of the session, but you can still interact with us. There's a questions pane where you can submit your questions. We'll get to those during our Q&A period at the end of the webinar. There's also a chat window where you can communicate with others attending. We will not be monitoring the chat, so please be sure to submit your questions in the questions pane. And as always, we will be sending a link to the recording in the next few days, as well as a copy of one of our report writer reports. So please be on the lookout for that email. Our speakers for today's session, similar to last week or 2 weeks ago, is our Nick Campanelli, our onboarding manager, Tom Gibbons, our president and owner of F&W Pest Control, and Mike Chris, our team lead for onboarding. During today's webinar, we will expand and provide a hands-on look at the items we discussed during our webinar on April 2nd. As a quick reminder, if you do have any questions during the webinar, please remember to type them into the questions panel. At the end, we'll cover as many as we can. On our agenda today are making changes to PestPac settings for accuracy and reporting. We'll talk a little bit about the UDFs for searching and tracking and how to use them specifically in this environment. We'll talk about tips for setting service and scheduling. We will have a discussion with Nick and with Tom about using PestPac standard reports and specifically report writer so that you can gather and collect metrics. Mike will round us out with communications via a marketing automation, and I will cover once again promotions. With that said, I will turn the session over to Tom now.
Thanks, Paula. Appreciate it. So let me go ahead here and present my screen. Paula, if you can transfer stuff over to me, that'd be great. Yes. I don't know if I might be able to do it here.
No, I can do it right here.
All right.
Make you.
All right, so I think I'll set Paula.
Okay, thank you.
So what I want to do is just kind of walk through what we've been doing at my company to deal with the COVID-19 crisis. It's certainly been challenging having all our employees remote. So we've gotten kind of through a lot of that first couple of weeks here and seem to have things ironed out. But at the same time, what I want to do is be able to track the impact that this is having on my customers and my business overall. So we've made some changes and adjustments in PestPac that I wanted to share with you, and hopefully you'll find them useful. So you can kind of track what's going on, track the customers that don't want service currently, try to watch what you're losing, and at the same time try to like push orders off into the future. So, you know, if you have a quarterly customer, maybe we can still get to them in the next 90 days if at some point, you know, things subside to some extent. So what I want to go through is to show you what I did. So the first thing we did is we added a new user-defined field in PestPac on the locations, and you can kind of see it on my screen right here. It's called COVID Skip. And the way you do that is fairly simple. Go into your settings, company setup, and then you'll see the field setup section here in the top under general options. If you click on that, you'll see this is where you can set up your user-defined fields. I put mine as COVID Skip so I could track those locations that have elected to not have service temporarily. And I just made that a checkbox, so it's basically yes or no. And then this other option here, show at the top, basically puts that right up at that location screen with the AR balances. So my office team and sales reps can see that immediately when they open the account. The nice thing that allows me to do is now I can search for those customers fairly easily. and track them. So once you have that, under advanced search, you'll see my COVID skip option is here. For yes or no fields in PestPac, just putting a capital Y in here and clicking on the search icon, the little magnifying glass here, will return that list of customers that have elected to not have service during the crisis. The other thing you can do is once you have this list created, you can create a new dynamic list up here using list management. And I think Mike will talk to a little bit of this later in the session. This comes in extremely handy when you're doing some email campaigns and so on and so forth through PestPac. So one of the other things we did too was we wanted to basically create some additional lookup table codes in our system. And the ones that are really important here are certainly not serviced reason. So we added a note code for that. So if I go into my not service reasons in PestPac, you'll see I have a COVID-19 skip code in there. Some of the other ones that I changed and added codes for were also my cancel lookup table. So I want to be able to track customers that have canceled because of the COVID-19 crisis. Unfortunately, I think there's going to be some of the smaller businesses, especially in the hospitality, restaurants, things like that, that probably will not reopen. We know of a few of our customers already that have told us that this has done them in, unfortunately. So I want to track these cancels. So I know, is this because of the virus that we're getting this increase in cancel rates, or is this kind of match up with what we typically see as far as our churn rates go? The other code that I have added is one for credit memos. So a lot of times we have some older residential customers that we service quarterly. They were on a very old program that we offered years ago that we did both the inside and the outside of the home. And now we're doing just exterior services. Most people have been super understanding that we're going to do the exterior and that we'll come inside if needed, if they have an active infestation and they still have the same warranties. But we've had a couple that are just, hey, you know, you only did the outside, I think you should give me a discount. So we've added credit memos for COVID-19 and adjustment codes for COVID-19. We can use those as we see fit in adjusting invoices or just giving the customer an adjustment on their account. And then the final one is the COVID-19 message for call ahead. If you call ahead, that's a good one to use if you want to, again, stay in communication with your customers. And Mike's going to touch on that a little bit later in the webinar here today. The nice thing about the COVID-19 on the not service stuff is now I can run my technician report, production reports. So for example, if I run this for last week, make sure I use the role of technician or else I'll get some weird numbers back. I just want to look at the text that had not serviced last week for the COVID-19 virus. I got the code in here for not serviced, and then I include the checkbox here. I look at my history from both, my detail, and then if I run this report, I have mine grouped by technician, so I'll see what the impact to each one of my technicians have been for the last week. So in the case of Chris, he had 5 customers skip, so about 7% of his services, or 7% of the skips belong to him. It impacted him $403. And what we're doing is keeping track of these. So this is a nice way to see what the skip rates are because of COVID versus our standard kind of not serviced report. The other thing that I did is that I created a report writer report that gets emailed out automatically each morning from Report Writer. And this report basically lets me look by technician, any of those customers that have been checked off with that user-defined field as COVID skip. And what I look for is any work orders that are out in the future. And I'm having my office team basically work through this list each morning to confirm with the customers, you know, that they still don't want us to come out. They still want us to skip and what the upcoming work date is. And then they'll move these off into the future as they see fit. We have found a bunch of customers that skip the first couple of weeks and then realize that this is going on longer than we expected and that we may end up with bigger problems when it's finally over if they don't allow us to continue servicing the account. Hence, you know, pest populations are going to boom, and especially if nobody's in these buildings for a period of time, it could affect them reopening when the time comes. So this has been working out pretty well for us, and I'll get into more detail on this report. We're going to share this, as Paula mentioned, on the community site. It should work out of the box. You just need to adjust the user-defined field that you use and how you name it. But I'll show you how to do that when we get into building the report. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Nick, and Nick's going to go through and talk about tools and tips and best practices and some other reporting features that we can use. So it's over to you, Nick.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. If you want to transfer over the presenter role over to me, I'll take that right over whenever you get a second.
Absolutely. Give me 1 second here, and we'll get you set up. And you should be the presenter now.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom, and great recommendations for updating system-wide settings. And I think a lot of that will apply to what I'll be talking about up next as well. So hopefully everyone can see me okay here. Now with data accuracy and reliability in mind, I think there are a few things to consider with account and service management in PestPac, right? And so in other words, how you interact with PestPac in response to the COVID-19 crisis can most certainly have a negative water ripple effect on overall data management and reporting if the right measures aren't taken properly. So, I would pretty much say I think I can assure that you're going to thank yourself one day, maybe 3 months from now or even a year from now, in following some of the recommendations that Tom had showed us earlier and some of the overall best practices that we'll be going through for the rest of this session. So first up, in the event that recurring services are put on an indefinite hold or suspension, like a commercial service with a restaurant or a bar, for example, we would suggest to not deactivate that service setup. Let's keep it active, because if you deactivate a service setup now, you'll no longer generate service orders for the location, thus leading to the inability to post those services as skipped or not serviced, and you'll really miss your chance to reschedule them altogether. And that's something we just learned a few minutes ago based on some of Tom's suggestions and insights. So this is going to increase the likelihood of these services slipping through the cracks, which means you lose visibility altogether. So let me show you what I mean. Let's look at a sample service setup here. We're going to click on this Pest Control Weekly, and we can see this active checkbox is remained on here, right? So you want to keep these orders in the system so you can position yourself to continue to either reschedule them or at least push them out. And in a moment, we'll go through some common scheduling tools to use as well. Furthermore, we don't want to delete the orders that are being generated from this recurring service or even like a one-time service, right? So if I click into a service order here, I have an open order on the calendar. With the appropriate access, you could or could not delete this order. We don't want to do that, right? So if your customers are putting services on hold, or if worst case they're actually being canceled, this is definitely an oversight we've seen before, and I want to stress the importance of this recommendation. If you delete those service orders, you're losing historical records and reporting, and this will also have a cascading effect that's ultimately a negative one. So instead, if you know for sure you've exhausted all of your options with your customer and you know for certain that you won't be completing the orders at the time, you want to post those orders as not serviced. And so, of course, we can make some changes to the account. We can leverage something like a UDF. Tom had shown us how to create the UDF called Skip COVID-19, which is an indicator and kind of like a flag on the account that we could use for searching and reporting, right? So we have that option, of course. We can add other notes, like on the top right. You could even create a custom note code and call it COVID, right? So that way you can run a report on all the various notes you're entering into the system as they relate to COVID and the impact on the business. Now, in the unfortunate event that you do 100% lose their business and there's no winning them back under these circumstances, then you would want to deactivate the service, but you'll want to make sure that you use a cancel date and a cancel reason. So if I go into the service setup, and remember, if we do exhaust all of our options, okay, let's take that final step. We will deactivate it. Now for reporting and tracking, I can now come in here and choose a cancel date of today with my COVID-19 cancel reason, and I can go ahead and save that. So let's walk through the steps to post an order as not serviced, right? If things are just on some kind of indefinite hold and we want to skip over them, it's quite simple to do. So we're going to go back to the account. click on the order. And I do want to note that this can also be done on the mobile app as well. So you can give this type of functionality to your technicians with a particular access right, but we're just going to walk through the steps on desktop today. So we'll take this order, we're going to post that to a new batch, or you can also add that to an existing batch in your system. And here is where we would be able to find the order type dropdown. And in my test database here, we have a code for not serviced COVID-19, just like the one we saw in Tom's system as well earlier. And here is your opportunity to make any other kind of final changes. Remember, once we post this, it will void the job. So it would basically zero any kind of price points associated with that. But this is also a good opportunity for you to add a note or instructions, right? So you can kind of do all this in one fell swoop. If there's extra color you have to add to this and you want that for historical reasons, maybe a year from now, you need to look at a CSR's note about skipping the service, then you can use a custom note code, add in the note, and that'll be attached to their account. So those are all really good best practices to follow to make sure you have really strong level of detail in all of the work that you're doing here in skipping services. So if I go in here and I post it as not serviced, click on done. Like any other order, we'll go ahead and release the batch. And I'm just going to return back to the location detail page for Monmouth Food Plan here, just so I can show you where that lands up on the history here. So if I go into service history, here it is. We can see that invoice for the termite renewal. It originally had that $100 production value tied to it, but it's been voided and it's been not serviced with the COVID-19 tag on that. Now, of course, I can run more reporting, and this information can also funnel into Report Writer as well. So that will help you with tracking and reporting on locations and services affected by the COVID-19 crisis. But in an effort to keep services on the calendar and to become more flexible with your customers, you want to be sharp on some of the scheduling tools in PestPac as well. So the most simple tool to use for manual rescheduling of one order at a time is the appointment scheduler. And I'm sure many of you use this daily, but I like to just highlight a few easy to use features that will help you as you continue to combat some of these challenges and keep people on the calendar. So that way we can ensure the business is still running as best as we can. So there's a very easy click and drop feature to reschedule orders from day, time, and technician to another. And this is a really good solution for the occasional rescheduling of customers who can't commit to appointments right now due to the COVID-19 or any time for that matter. So to do that, it's really simple. You just click on the service order on the calendar right here, and you'll see it's highlighted like in a black or dark blue border here. And now my cursor is being followed by this little indicator here, and this is where I can now place this order on a different day, a different time, and a different technician, or a different month altogether, right? So we talked about maybe having to push these out for another month or so when things start to rebound a little bit. So with this highlighted, I can jump to the next month. So I'll click on May 2020, and let's just go to the week of Monday the 11th. I'll see, if I've generated for May already, I'll see the orders that are already on the calendar. So this is a good way for me to prevent any conflicts. And again, I have that same capability. So I know there's an opening on the 11th of May at 10 o'clock, and I press on save. Now, you could have some like eligibility date parameters in here. I'm just going to go ahead and override that. So we've taken it off the 15th of April, and we moved it and pushed it out till May 11th. So it's just that easy. And you could be doing this in real time with your customers when you're on the phone with them. Another neat feature is the show distances. This is like one of those kind of like underutilized gems of the appointment scheduler. If I double click on this service order here, there's a blue link on the top called Show Color by Distance. And this is pretty neat. So I can click on that, and I'm going to jump back to today's date. And if I hover my cursor over other surrounding appointments for this technician, you'll see there's a distance indication on the very bottom of the service order pop-up. So it's 23.89 miles away. So this is a really great way for me to kind of drive routing efficiency and being mindful of geographical locations as I'm pushing things away. So anything showing up right now in a lighter color like green or orange means it's closer. The darker it gets into the more purple violet color, the further away. So if I hover my cursor over orange, this is 0 miles away or 11 miles away, for example. In addition to that, so if I just open up this appointment, for those of you that are signed up with RoutUp, you can also use the Best Fit tool in here as well. So I can click on Best Fit for this particular order. And then this would allow RoutUp to find the best date and time for this order based on your workday calendar and RoutUp parameters you've set for this service. So this will kind of do the heavy lifting for you as well. So another great tool to use. Another great built-in tool here is the Reschedule Service Orders tool. So we're going to back out of the appointment scheduler here. We'll click on Menu, Service and Scheduling, Reschedule Service Orders. That's how we access it. And this is a scheduling tool that allows you to, that allows for bulk scheduling service orders. So whereas we use the appointment scheduler for just usually handling one at a time for that kind of calendar type visibility, this is more of like a bulk move. In the event that you're facing any challenges with technician shortages, or maybe a technician has to take time off to take care of a loved one, and now you have to move multiple jobs from one technician to another, those are all things you can do. So it all starts with the advanced search page here, so we can drill down to these services we need to bulk change. And maybe you have to comb through what you've missed earlier in the month due to uncertainty of everything going on. So you can even go back in time if you had to as well. We're not talking about just jobs in the future. So at minimum, I'll just come in here. I'll pick sort of like a broad date range. I can use any of the other search criteria along with my sort by options, which will change the way they're sorted top to bottom. And I click on my search icon on the top right. And this is what the tool looks like. So we've returned 14 results. One of like the highlighted features here is the ability to advance all work days by X number of days. So again, this would be great to do like a bulk move, and I can come in here and say I want to move all of these jobs 3 days ahead, 3 days out, and I would just click on Go to do that. I can make manual changes here as well. I can change the work times, I could change the technician, and I can actually copy any of the parameters here into a different order below. I can also use this to lock appointments too. And the neat thing is that if I have to do some further investigation on the order, I can click on the order link on the left-hand side, and that will just bring me to the service order detail page where I can view more information. And then the last scheduling tip I'd like to highlight here is the update constraints utility. So we'll get there almost the same way. So we're going to go to Menu, Service and Scheduling, and this time we actually click on Print Service Orders. So this tool is kind of embedded here. On the right-hand side under Output Format, we have Update Constraints. So this is a tool or a utility for those of you that are signed up with RoutUp and PestPac. And basically and constraints are basically scheduling parameters you put around your customers and their services so that RoutUp can work with those parameters to run its optimization engine, right? So that makes sense. But under these circumstances, you'll need to be flexible with your customers and opening up the constraints. So when you open up those constraints, that will give RoutUp a bit more room to work with, and it will allow the engine to be a little bit more flexible too. So you're kind of stepping outside your normal parameters for RoutUp. So that's the reason why I just wanted to quickly highlight this. But we come in here, and I'm sure many of you have used this page before, but we have a great deal of selection criteria on the left-hand side where we can drill down to our service order selection we're looking to update. So I'll just kind of do the same thing. I'll use like a 2-week date range or so. I click on Update Constraints on the Output Format section, and you click on Display as the next step. So this is what the tool looks like. Now there is a technical limitation to this tool. So know that you'd only be able to update the constraints within the current month of the order. So if you need to push out orders into the following month, or even before like a prior month, like if there's a June order that you have to move to May or something, you wouldn't be able to do it here. You would just have to use some of the other means we had talked about earlier today, like using the appointment scheduler or reschedule service order tool. But you would most likely start with a work date range and any other important search criteria to narrow this down. And then from here, we have 3 primary functions at the very top. So we have update locked, and this allows you to update the locked status of the selected orders below. This could also be used as a solid cleanup tool as well for those of you that have to lock or unlock your orders out there. You have update eligibility dates, and this allows you to add the number of days you want to be allowed before and after the current work date, almost like an extra buffer before and after the original work date. And then update eligibility times, which allows you to add a certain number of minutes before and after the current work time. Right, so that makes sense. So let's just walk through a quick example of adding, let's do, we're going to update eligibility dates here, and we're just going to add like 7 days before and after the current work date for April, just so you can kind of draw a comparison of what the original parameters look like versus the post update utility. So we'll come in here and we're going to hit the number 7 into this field, and we can see the plus minus indicator here. And if there's like an outlier here that you want to be excluded from this utility, we would just simply uncheck that. So you can be a little bit more flexible in that regard. Ultimately, once you have that in place, you click on preview. And then it'll give you 2 columns for the original scheduling criteria versus the previewed criteria that would be updated. And then you could be able to draw your comparisons from there. And you could see, kind of looking at the starting ending dates and the ending work dates, those parameters have changed a bit. So then once you're done, you would just click on commit. If you had to make changes again, you would hit preview one more time, and then your final step would be commit. So there's just 1 or 2 more reports I want to highlight here before I hand it back over to Tom. So Tom did talk about the technician production report, which is a really great way to track the level of skipped services, especially against the COVID-19 crisis if you're using that new not service reason. I just want to show you another report that it has a very similar function, but you can even get a little bit more comprehensive and robust with it. It's called the Invoice List Report. So we'll go to all reports. You click on invoice list on the right-hand side under data lists. And this report actually produces like a record of every invoice in the system, whether it's not serviced or not. But I just want to show you how you can pull in not serviced orders using this report. And you can just see like right off the bat, like comparing this to the technician production report, you'll see there's many more search criteria and filter options. What I really like about this report is that you have the ability to include or exclude data columns that get funneled into the report. So for me, as the person running this report, I can easily identify this is the most critical data I want to either sort by or group by or just to display as part of my yielded results in that report. So very, very flexible and very robust. But what I'll do here is just as a quick example, I'll come in and I'll say I only want to include orders that were posted as not serviced. So that's my first step. I'll come in here and just choose a relatively broad date range. I'll keep scrolling down a little bit further here. This is important. If we're looking at pulling out not serviced reasons, we have to change the void status to voided, right? Because a not serviced order does become a voided invoice. So if you don't switch that, it's going to skew your results. So we'll come in here. What I want to do is I want to get a full snapshot of all the not serviced, but I want to particularly see what percentage of COVID-19 is taking up my not serviced reason. So what I'll do is I'll choose not serviced reason as my primary sort by, and I'll choose group by. So it's going to bucket by not serviced reason. And then the most important thing here is that I reveal the not serviced column. And I could do anything else here. I could even include maybe I want to use this report to start calling my customers. I can include their phone number, right? So I'll come in here, location phone. And let's go ahead and click on display. And I think I might have missed something here. So not serviced. I'm going to go back a little bit further in time just to use a little bit more data, just so I can show you what that subgrouping looks like on the report. All right, great. So I can see very easily my subgroups. So within that date range, 10 jobs were posted as not serviced due to COVID-19, and here's my total production value associated with it. And then along with any other kind of not serviced reason. So it's going to group all those different reasons together, giving me the total of 12 invoices for that time range. So I can see in this case, COVID-19 is having the worst impact on my not serviced reason. So again, a great way to get that snapshot and should hopefully make you make better decisions as you kind of get creative in working out solutions with you and your customers. And then the very last report will be, and this is kind of switching gears to the more accounting side of things as opposed to servicing, but Tom mentioned before, if we're going to be using adjustments or credit memos to discount services or waive balances because of COVID-19, we can use the payment register report to get a snapshot of that information. So I go to Menu, Billing, and then I click on Payment Register. And we'll see here under the payment type option, there's adjustments. So I'll just include adjustments. I'll come in here and I'll just use, a relatively general date range like I did earlier. I can use any of the search criteria available, but what I'd like to just show again is, what I'd like to do is use the adjustment reason as a primary sort by and a group by as well. So I'll come in here, click on display. And in this case, we have a total of $250 of adjustments due to COVID-19. And in this example, I don't have other adjustment reasons, but they would be bucketed out. So again, you have like that total kind of fully painted picture of the overall impacts. So, so I hope you found some of this knowledge and insight to be helpful. I'll hand it back to Tom where he'll demonstrate some of the building some reports and report writer. So back to you, Tom.
Thanks, Nick. That was great stuff. Appreciate you sharing that. All right, so let me make myself presenter again. So what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes and walk people through how I kind of built this report that we're doing in Report Writer. We're going to share this at the end too, so don't worry if you don't want to follow along or just don't feel comfortable with it. You'll get a copy of this report that you can then put in your system and use that. So the easiest way to get started with Report Writer is basically once you launch it from within PestPac, this plus button on the top right-hand side is where you kind of create a new report. And what I like to do is start with Express View. It's probably the easiest way to kind of start assembling a report. You can always convert this over to one of the other types of reports later, like an advanced report and so on. So let's go ahead and get started with that. If you haven't been in here, you'll get prompted for this little tutorial. It's really easy to use and suggest you take this if you haven't already. For now, we're just going to skip this, and I'm just going to disable this for now. And we'll keep hints on. So you're kind of get this blank slate. So where you start is basically with this field section on the left-hand side. So as I go through this, what I want to do is basically look for customers and work orders. Those are the two things we're going to be working with today. So let's start with getting our customers added. So when I expand this by clicking the little arrow next to accounts, I have all the different objects in PestPac relating to accounts. We're going to be primarily concerned with locations down the bottom here. And then I'm going to click that little arrow again to expand, and this will show me all the fields under the location that are available for me to use right now. So what I want to do is start basically with my location code, since I'll be able to reference that in PestPac. These are alphabetical, so I'm going to come down and just drag my location code into my desktop here, my area. The next thing I want is the customer's name. So that's going to be down a little further under the ends. We're going to add that field in there. And then I'll want my customer's phone number. So we're just going to go right down and grab phone, and that's going to add that as well. Now, the next part that we're going to need is really the service order information. And the whole purpose of this report is to look for those customers that basically had their services skipped. So the one more thing that I need to add from locations is going to be that user-defined field that we created. So I'm going to come down here and we're going to add that user-defined field in over here. And now we can move on and start pulling our work order information. Before we do the work order information, though, one of the things I want to talk about is we only want to filter for the customers that have this user-defined skip reason set. I don't want to pull all my customers in. That would be a crazy large report that I really don't need. So the way filters work is there's two different ways we can do it. The right-hand pane here, we have the filter item here, and I can drag my filters in, so I can just drag from the fields column right over here. I'm usually filtering on items that are already in the report though, so I prefer to do it up here from what they call the Radial Menu. So next to each field name, you get this little dot. If I click on the dot, it does this little fly out Radial Menu thing, which is kind of cool. If I click on the filter icon, it's going to add it to that right-hand side for me automatically. So just like that, I have my location, user-defined field for COVID there. And what I want to do is set this to the value I want. So I want this to equal yes. In computer language, that's going to be a 1 for yes or no's. No's are zeros, ones are yeses. And I'm just going to choose my 1 here. And now if I want to just check my work so far, the nice thing about this Express view is it lets me do live data. So by clicking live data, it's going to go out there and start pulling just the customers in that have that little flag check for that user-defined field. And there I go. I have all my customers selected. So it looks like it's pulling in what I want so far. This is great. So I'm going to unclick the live data thing button at the top, and we'll go back to our kind of builder view mode. And now let's go ahead and just minimize this and get back to the core things here. And we're going to go into service, and we're going to scroll down and go into service orders. That's really the one that we want to deal with. So I want to pull up orders that are in the future for these customers so we can deal with the scheduling issues around these. So certainly I want to add my order number. So again, alphabetic, I'm going to scroll down and find my order number. And my little scroll bar doesn't like to cooperate. So I'm going to do order number. Where'd it go? There we go. Now add that here. And then I want my service code, so I know what service that we need to deal with. Sometimes like customers have multiple services like, you know, pest and mosquito, maybe they want to skip the pest, but they still want you to do the mosquito. So I'm going to get my service code here. Oh, I'm sorry about that. This acts really weird sometimes when you're doing a screen presentation. It bounces around a lot. So let me go down and find my service code. We'll drag that over. And then finally, from my list here, I want my work date, so I know when this is scheduled for. And I also want my technician, so I want to group this by my technicians here. So I'm going to grab my tech code, and we're going to add that as well. So if I want to do some grouping with these, or before we even do that, let's talk about filtering on the work date. So I don't want to really worry about maybe stuff that's occurring in the past. I want to look at stuff that's scheduled for tomorrow and forward. I'm going to use my little Radial Menu and click on my filter icon again. And now it's also added that service order work date to my fields. And I will really want to have anything that is greater than or equal to, and I want this to be tomorrow. So I could either use the calendar. When I do that, it's going to set that date permanently in this report. I want this report to kind of refresh on its own when I automate it to do get emailed each morning. So I'm going to use this little function feature on the right-hand side, and that lets me say tomorrow. So this will always change this date on the report to tomorrow for me. So we should be good to go with all our fields. Now, the next thing I want to do is basically sort this or group this by my technicians. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go back into my builder here, and I want to choose my technician as my primary sort. So I'm going to change the grouping direction here. So my sorts, by choosing him or her, that becomes my primary sort here. So this is the first sort. I then want to sort by work date. So I'm going to go and choose this one next, and this will change that. Oh, I did it wrong. I'll change my text to my first sort. So you're just going to play around with this. So I can see my sorts now. Technicians 1, work dates number 2. So that's really the 2 sorts that I want to have. And then the final piece of this is I want to group by my technicians. So all I do is again open my Radial Menu and hit the group icon. And now you'll see it's added a header for my groups in there and a footer, and we'll total up these. And I can check my work by doing live data. And looks like I'm getting what I wanted. So this is perfect. Now, what I want to do is I want to then save this report as an advanced report so I can schedule it. And the way we do that, once I'm happy with the results here, I click the gear icon on the right, and I'm going to come down to create advanced report down the bottom here and click on that. It's going to ask me for a title of this. So I'm just going to do COVID skip, and this is version 1. And I should learn how to spell COVID at this point because that's all that I hear about all day long. And I'm going to go ahead and create my advanced report. And you'll see that the formatting's changed a little bit here. This is the advanced report builder, a little bit more of an expert mode if you're new to report writer, but still fairly easy to use. One thing I want to point out here, when we do send this report, when you get it and click edit, it'll look very similar to this. The only thing you may need to change to get this report to work would be the filters. The way you access that is you click the gear icon at the top, click on filters, and it's going to show you those 2 filters that we applied in our Express report. You may have your user-defined field labeled differently than mine. If that's the case, just select it from the list down here under user-defined fields and just replace that and set that to yours. And that should be all you need to do. Now, at this point, if I want to schedule this report, I can basically find this report in my list here. So I'm going to come over to my list of reports. That's this little kind of looks like a piece of paper. And I can see my COVID skip version 1 that we just saved is here. There's a little menu option here. I call it the Hamburger Menu because it looks like a McDonald's hamburger with the buns and the hamburger in the center. I'm just going to click on that. And I have an option now to basically create a schedule for this report to run on its own each day. I'm going to click on Schedule Report. It's going to open the scheduling wizard. I just give it a name. I'm going to call this my daily COVID report. I can choose the format that I want it to come out in. So PDF is usually pretty good. If you need to work with it in Excel or do some other stuff, you can certainly change that. I'm going to choose a time here. I can do that by choosing the little clock icon, and let's have this run at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. And then finally, my recurrence pattern is going to be daily. I'm going to repeat this every single day with no end date. I can choose an end date if I want to, or a start date. You really don't have to do any of this section. The wizard down below, well, I click on the next button. It's going to bring up those filters for me. So again, if you need to modify this filter, you can do that. I don't need to at this point because it should be all set. You could ignore the batch reports. This is a little bit more sophisticated, not really what we need right now. And then finally, when I send my email out, who do I want to send this to? So in my case, I have a distribution list called CSRs@fwpest.com. So I would use that, and each one of my CSRs would get a copy of this report in their inbox because they're members of that distribution group. For testing purposes, I'll just send this to myself at WorkWave. I give it a subject. So again, I want my COVID report. I would definitely do a subject line. Sometimes if you don't, it thinks it's spam. And then any information in the email text, I don't really need anything because I know what this report's about. At this point, I click finish. My report has been scheduled, and now starting tomorrow morning, this will get emailed out automatically at 5 a.m. So quick overview. Again, don't get too wrapped up in the nitty-gritty of this because we're going to share the report with you. But I suggest you play with Report Writer. It's a super powerful tool, especially the scheduling features for automated reports. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this over now to Mike, who's going to talk about some communications with our customers. So let me go ahead and get him as the organizer here. And thank you for your time today. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thanks everyone for being here today. So like Tom said, I'll be talking a little bit about the communication strategies you can use to your customers, specifically by way of our marketing automation module, which I know Paul is going to talk about a promotion we have running for that right now too. So if you like what we're doing here, you get a chance to give it a try. So we're going to take advantage of some of the tips that Tom gave us, specifically using the COVID skip UDF on locations. So what we're going to do is we're going to build 2 different lists for 2 different campaigns. I'll do a little bit of the quicker version of it. And what that'll mean is that we always want to make sure that in any kind of communication, we're targeting to the right people. We don't want to send a message to all of our customers about them skipping service, right, when they didn't. But same for the alternative of that. If they haven't skipped their service, we don't really want to put them into the mind frame that they should skip their service. Now, maybe they will, maybe they won't. You ultimately can only influence that, not control it, but we want a good segmented list. So to do that, we're going to first start by building a list of customers, taking advantage of the UDF that Tom suggested. So I've already put that in my account. So I'm going to go to Advanced Search. And keeping in mind that this particular list is going to be for an email campaign. So I'm going to just default in my Advanced Search email address to yes. And what I'm going to do is you'll see my UDF here, COVID skip, same as Tom did. And this is, I guess, little known about what you can do with advanced search, but when you do have a checkbox type field, like the one we suggested for this user-defined field, what I can do if I want to find the customers who have it checked off is come into the advanced search and just type in Y. Y, of course, means yes. And when I do this, and then I've said email address is yes, I probably want to uncheck credit status and everything too, just to make sure I'm not sending this to anyone who may owe me money. But I'm going to click the magnifying glass. So all I've done, basically, the only thing here that's really new is I've said email address is yes, and I've typed in Y for COVID skip. And when I search this list, I'll get the 11 results for customers in my account who have skipped their service because of COVID. Now, this was a very straightforward list to run. I'm just going to click Add to List and make sure New List is selected up here. I'm going to give this a name. So my list name for this will be COVID_skip, because I just want to make sure I keep everything grouped together well. And I forgot to point out as I clicked it, but I also made this a dynamic list. That's going to come back and be important in about 3 minutes, because a dynamic list will grow as time goes on. But I'm not done with advanced search yet. All I've done so far is make a list of customers that will grow over time of accounts that have skipped their service because of COVID-19. What I do want to do while I'm still here, though, is I want to go to advanced search. Now it's time to make my other list. And that's going to be a list of customers who have not skipped anything. Now, it's just as important for me to message these customers and let them know that I'm open for business as it is for me to message the customers who have skipped. So for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing. I only want people with email addresses. But here's what I'm going to do here. Because those customers who have skipped service could end up in this search, I want to exclude them. So for COVID skip, for this list, I'm just going to say N for no. No means no. So I do that, and now I'm automatically going to leave the people with COVID skip checkbox checked off. I'm going to leave them out of the search. So here's what I'm going to do now, just to further refine, because I always want to make sure my list is targeted. I'm going to look for a service in my account that may have some interior aspects to it, right? Because I'm going to want to try and move some of these people over to an exterior spray for a little bit. Now, everyone's services are different, so just keep that in mind. You may have different targeting. I'm just going to, if you take away nothing else, just keep in mind all I've really done is set COVID skip to no, and I've set email address to yes, and I'm going to pick a few services that are active. I'm just going to pick in here my services search box. I'm just going to do my PC monthly, just because. And I'm going to say my setup status for this one is active. I only want people who have active PC monthly setups going on right now. Now, I happen to know that that list by itself without COVID skip is about 41 people. When I search this with COVID skip, where we're specifically saying I want the answer of no, I'm going to get 31 results. Now with this, I'm going to add to a new list. This one I'm going to keep static, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to say COVID, and then I'm going to say active service. So they haven't skipped yet. Now I've built my list. And these are the two building blocks that are really the most important thing, making sure I have my segmented list of customers who have skipped service and my list of customers who have not yet skipped any services. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now go into the marketing automation module. And first things first, I'm going to go and look at my templates because I want to show those to you real quick. For any existing users of marketing automation or any new users who come on, this isn't a sales pitch, I'm just telling you what we did. We made special COVID-19 templates, and we will load these into your account for you if you want them. We have 3 of them, and their titles are pretty general, right? And they're meant for you to go in and fill out on your own, but we've given you a framework to work with. One for a highlight for how COVID-19 does not stop pests. One that's a bit more about the general, just having a general offer and it's related to the time that we're in right now, as well as an email that has a little bit more of a focus around safety. I'm going to preview one of these. I'm going to preview actually both of them with you, just to give you an idea of what they look like. So for instance, let's kind of put this in perspective. So if you figure that for the customers who have skipped their service, they are customers, right? If we're getting in their heads, they are customers who are nervous about anyone coming around their homes, and they may not want anyone inside or maybe even outside. So we want to have a message that appeals to them and reinforces the value of your company. So let's take a look at this one. So that customer, because they may be a bit more nervous, I'm going to say maybe send them the safety email, and I'm going to preview this. And of course, you would definitely need to edit this for your own purposes, but this email just reinforces that safety is your top priority with a little bit of detail and one non-obtrusive offer that maybe to just get them back in the fold. Now, maybe you're not going to offer these people anything. Maybe you just want to reassure them about the entire process that you guys have. That's really up to you. This is just an idea, and I can absolutely edit this template if I wanted to. But it is a different message than the message we're going to send to our customers who haven't skipped yet. So if this email is just about, with a theme of safety and talking about and reinforcing the value of your services, then what I want to do for people who haven't skipped any services is this. I want to talk about this offer template here. I'm sorry, does not stop pests. I'm going to preview this one. And again, everything's editable. I'm not going to go too far into it right now. But to this group of customers, remember, they haven't skipped any services. What I want to do with them is reinforce that, well, COVID does not stop pests and that we remain an essential business. This one has a few examples of what some safety provisions we could use. Like, for instance, maybe we're offering exterior-only service offerings, contactless contracts and reports. If you were attending 2 weeks ago when Tom was talking a bit about how the COVID-19 pandemic has influenced his business, he mentioned that he's switching a lot of his services to the exterior only for now. So that's something you could do here too. And every email needs some kind of call to action, and whether you want to put an offer in here or not, or maybe you're just trying to get people to keep their services, this is a great informational letter to try and influence your customers to not skip their services. Now, let's quickly just go in and just set up a quick campaign. I'm going to tell you why one of these, and specifically why the email to the customers who have skipped service is going to be a dynamic list. So what I'm going to do is go to Menu, Sales and Marketing. I'm going to go to my dashboard, and I'm going to click Create Campaign. I'm going to call this COVID Skipped Customers. And this is going to be a drip campaign. Because this list, it's just the reality. This list is going to grow, and I don't want to have to send new emails out to everyone every time. What I'm going to do is this. A drip campaign doesn't ever have to end. So what I'll do is I'm going to say, who am I sending this campaign to? And I named that COVID Skip, and it's a dynamic list. It's going to tell me any email addresses I have on the list. That's fine. And the nice thing about this is because it's a dynamic list, and you'll see in a moment what I'm going to do with it, is I can time this to go out after someone has been added to the list, and it'll just do it automatically. I'm going to just say who this campaign is from. I'm just going to keep it at my email address. Maybe you're going to do it from the owner of the company. Maybe you're going to do it from an office manager. That's really up to you. It depends on what kind of personal touch you're looking for. And then I'm also going to add my content. This is where I'm going to pick one of those email templates. So in this case, for the COVID skipped group, I'm going to do that safety email. I'm going to add a step, call drip step 1. And I'm going to pick how long should we wait before we send them this message. So, customer calls in, says, hey, I'm going to skip my service. You or your CSR or someone goes and checks that box off on the location. And when you do that, how many days from then should we wait before we send them a message? Now, there's no true right or wrong answer here. I would think maybe you want to wait probably less than a week, maybe 3 days. I mean, you know your customers best. But after that box is checked, wait 3 days. And I'm going to select my template. And I'm going to do for this one, I'm going to do my safety email to pick just who's sending it. And then what days should we send it on? I'm not going to go into too much detail with this. We can always talk about it more later if you're interested in this. And what time it should send. I probably don't want to send it at 9 a.m. Open rates tend to be better between like 10 and 11 and ending around 1. Now I could add more emails. I'm personally not, because a lot of people are sending emails right now, and these people have already skipped. They're already nervous. So this is just a reassuring kind of message. Again, you know your customers better. If you want to email them more, you can certainly add more steps to this campaign. But I'm going to save. And then from here, I can just start my campaign. Click OK, and that's it. This drip campaign will now automatically send to customers 3 days after that checkbox is checked with an email talking about the safety precautions you're taking, or any other language you want in there, maybe even an offer for exterior services. Because maybe you make different versions of this for your different services, your quarterly versus your monthly, or your one-times versus your setups. And it's up to you, really. Now, with that, I could also go in the interest of time, I'm not going to, but I could go in and schedule a single send campaign for the customers who haven't skipped, because I want to remind them that we're still here. I could do a drip campaign there if I wanted to as well. That's really up to you. But due to how much that list could change and how variable things are these days, maybe I only want to do a single send to try and drive in some of that business. But that's, again, up to you. Either way, the idea is you just need to be in communication with your customers and reminding them of your value proposition. Number one, if they haven't canceled service, that you are taking all the right precautions and that you're still going to show up on time. And then if they have skipped, just reminding them of the services they could have. And kind of to Tom's point before, pests are not stopped by COVID-19. And if it's for instance, we didn't even talk about segmenting this for commercial customers, but maybe you email your commercial customers with a few short statistics about how quickly pests can take over a building. That's really up to you. And I would say on that end, just remember, segment your lists and target appropriately and the right message. Now with that, I'm going to pass this back over to Paula, who I think is just going to wrap us up, and then we have some Q&A and answer any questions if we have them. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, great. I hope everyone could see my, show my screen. Everyone could see my screen now. So wanted to just cover, as Mike just went over, marketing automation. For those of you who like the templates and do not currently have marketing automation, we are running a 1-month marketing automation trial valid through the end of this month, and those templates will be included. And Adam, I will get back to you about your specific account. The second offer we have is actually 20% off any new module purchase between now and the end of June. So we wanted to kind of get out into your busy season as well, let you know and have the ability to come on board with any of these other modules that we may have covered today and in the past. And finally, for those of you who do not currently process payments through WorkWave, we are offering a 1 free month of recurring software bill for any new PestPac customer that signs up within the first 90 days. So we'll be sending out an email over the next few days. It'll have links to refer to these offers, as well as a link for the recording for those of you that want to share it out. And yeah, and then also we will have a link into community where the report that Tom shared earlier will be available for download with appropriate instructions. Want to just also remind you that we are changing the format back to the old format where it'll be a WorkWave user conference only. In 2020, we still are working and crossing our fingers to go forward in Austin on November 9th through the 12th. And that's pretty much wraps up what I had for today. I wanted to just give it another minute or two to see if there's any additional questions. I know that we did have a comment that came in from Adam during the session here, and he was suggesting that there might be it might be helpful to effectively set up long-term self-correcting holds on a recurring interval service. One way to do that would be to set up the last generation date to a super far future date. He actually said like January 1st, year 4000, for example, and that would keep them active while preventing any new orders from generating. So when the customer is ready to get back on schedule, creating, posting, and releasing an order from the setup, we'll just basically adjust the last generation date and bring you back to the recurring status. I don't know, Nick or Tom, if you have any comments with regard to that, if you thought that was, a valid point, valid, suggestion.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Paula, and thanks, Adam, for sharing the tip there. I really like that idea, absolutely, and I think if it works well for your company, obviously that's a good thing. I would just, I'm more of like a big picture kind of guy. I'm always thinking, okay, well, what are the potential short-term impacts or long-term impacts and usability and things like that. So while I definitely think that works well, I would just make sure that you have the right reporting in place to easily identify those customers. So something like the service setup list report, you can include the column and you can sort by last gen date, which is what you're using to push these customers out. So, you can kind of maybe use like January 1st, the year 4000 as your placeholder date. So, anyone that has that date is being skipped due to COVID-19, and then you can group by that. So that's definitely one way to handle it. I would just say so while that'll increase, that'll decrease the number of steps in the office for your users for sure, no doubt. So it's going to streamline efficiency and things like that. I would say the one trade-off there is that because those orders aren't generating in the system automatically because they're being skipped essentially, then you might lose some reporting insights on not service, which is the one thing that we talked about. So it might be a little bit more difficult to capture the production value and the dollar values associated with those orders that are technically not being generated. That's my take on it. Tom, if you have anything else to kind of chime in on, I'd love to hear your feedback too.
No, I agree. That's a great suggestion and one I may actually look into. So appreciate that.
That's great. Great. Well, it looks like we have no more questions, and we are at the top of the hour. So I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, and a very big thanks to Tom, Nick, and Mike. Once again, the link to the recording will be sent out in a thank you email within the next few days. And also be sure to check out the PestPac community for a copy of the report writer report Tom showed and some other articles, including an article called Steps to Take for COVID-19 Loss Reporting. If you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to your account manager or contact us at sales@workwave.com. It's been my pleasure to host this today. This concludes our session for today. Take care and speak soon.